The protests in Minneapolis capture an underappreciated fact about the Democratic Party. It is configured to react in unreasoning rage to everything President Trump does.
We cannot counter Donald Trump's chaos with our own brand of chaos.
The challenge of messaging, how to condemn roundups of illegal migrants without defending protesters' lawlessness, is only a symptom of the problem.
Go lick food somewhere else.
The problem arose from a Byzantine network of activist nonprofits created and fostered over the past decade by liberal foundations and progressive billionaires. It started more or less in 2010, during negotiations on a cap-and-trade bill that in part aimed to put a price on carbon emissions.
You've got an independent in Joe Lieberman, you've got a Republican in Lindsey Graham, and you've got a Democrat in John Kerry that are working through a proposal on comprehensive energy legislation.
2 months later, the bill was dead. Animated by fears of global catastrophe, wealthy foundations and donor-class ideologues decided they couldn't achieve their goals by democratic persuasion and had to create an army of nonprofit groups to wage legal and political war on the imagined enablers of climate change. The money soon flowed to other areas, as money does. The flow accelerated during the pandemic and George Floyd riots in 2020.
There was an acknowledgement that time was absolutely of the essence.
Everything that we're seeing in terms of economic inequality, injustice, flaws in the system have been accentuated by the pandemic.
For the first time, perhaps ever, many donors are starting to acknowledge that equity is an important lens that they need to view their work through.
Those to benefit from this newfound interest included advocacy and activist organizations, pushing causes including social justice, Palestinian statehood, LGBTQ rights, and, as ever, climate sustainability. Mackenzie Scott, ex-wife of Jeff Bezos, has given $26 billion since 2019. But other billionaires with left-leaning proclivities include Michael Bloomberg, George Soros, Tom Steyer.
Philanthropy, if we invest through the lens of justice, we can advance that reality.
Today, about half of the electorate disapproves of the arrests and deportations of immigration and customs enforcement officers. But the anti-ICE protests in Minneapolis aren't primarily, or maybe at all, the spontaneous uprisings of an outraged citizenry.
They're breaking windows, dragging pregnant women down the street, just plain grabbing Minnesotans and shoving them into unmarked vans, kidnapping innocent people with no warning and no due process.
Governor Tim Walz, in a televised address that sounded like a narration of Kristallnacht, urged viewers to record ICE operations on their iPhones.
Take out that phone and hit record. Help us create a database of the atrocities against Minnesotans.
Ordinary people don't do that. Nor do they post ads on social media platforms targeting hotels that rent rooms to ICE agents. Activists do these things. Back in 2018, members of the Sunrise Movement, a group that organizes youth around climate issues, were arrested as they staged a sit-in at the office of then House Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi. It was attended by freshman Congressman AOC.
Yes, we can mobilize small dollar donations. We can mobilize small everyday people's contributions, but we can also mobilize everyday people to action.
Today, Sunrise wants a piece of the anti-ICE action. According to a Washington Free Beacon report, Sunrise is training activists to do things like plague hotels and car rental companies that do business with ICE. One of Mr. Soros' organizations, Open Society Foundations, has given Sunrise $2 million since 2019. Meanwhile, the MacArthur Foundation gave $250,000 in 2024, and the Ford Foundation $700,000 over the past 2 years.
The No Kings protests, orchestrated by left-wing nonprofits in dozens of cities during the fall of 2025, were heavily funded by a variety of activist philanthropies.
Notes Carl Zinsmeister in his book Sweet Charity. Mr. Zinsmeister tallies 203 separate nonprofit protest sponsors.
ICE out now!
Donor-class progressives no doubt believe they're helping Democrats and hurting Mr. Trump by shoveling so much money at left-wing nonprofits. But are they? Plainly, the anti-Israel protests of 2024 complicated Kamala Harris's task of finding a running mate.
What about Shapiro in Pennsylvania? I'm not really commenting on I'm commenting on who I think would be a great choice.
Professional nuisances detract attention from things Democrats would rather talk about, like affordability and health care, and force their intended Democratic beneficiaries to instead defend lawbreakers and inflame voters with stories of fascistic thuggery.
It's a campaign of organized brutality against the people of Minnesota by our own federal government.
This is the world wealthy liberals created when they decided climate change and later systemic racism and all the other so-called existential causes required extra democratic action. It amounts to a subtler and more effective attack on democracy than anything Mr. Trump has attempted.